once again, hi all of you, and don't share your desktop and don't write anything on desktop. Soon after a couple of minutes, I'm going to share my desktop, and never ever try to write anything on the desktop. Just to keep watching. In case if I would like to ask you questions, I may give you permission. Then you can ask me the questions. Now coming to this session, I'm just going to share my screen. I open Python shell. Okay, this is now all of you must be able to see my ideally editor, right? You can just write yes. So whenever I ask question, since you don't have the opportunity to talk to me, never open microphone. Don't need to open the microphone. You can just simply write it okay, something like that. So you should be able to see my desktop, and especially this ideally. So I didn't save this. Let me save somewhere. If we don't save, then we may not be able to work with this file. By the way, I assume that all of you are able to listen to me. If yes, just write yes in chat. Why there's no response? You're not able to listen to me? I just saved yes. So I assume all of you are able to listen to me. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, guys, today's concept is going to be this, classes. So I categorically would like to talk to you about classes because we never had this discussion in our classroom. And after this concept, I'll be having 3 more concepts which I need to talk to you. They are pandas, and then SciPy and NumPy. So I also have a full of assignments to you, and I'll talk about my assignments after half of the session. So I may not be able to talk diverge information. I mean, I don't like to waste my time talking about assignments in this because we have only 40 minutes of time. Without much introduction to this, I will just straight away go to the topic. So today's session is going to be the classes. So you suppose if you, in case if you don't know anything about classes, you can just go to the browser. And many of you don't like to use the browser, but browser is a very great developer tool. So well before you go for, you should know how to make use of the browser efficiently. Well before you go to the editor. So the most important editor for any developer is the browser. You should, because in most of the development firms, developers use browser for because none of us are really aware of anything about. There'll be newer and newer problems every day in software development. So as and when some requirement happens, the developers just for every petty problems they take themselves to the browser and refer the material, come back, and they involve in development. That is how the protocol happens in most of the software development. Okay, since you are a student, you don't know the importance of the browser, but you should have the. Now, once again, today's concept is classes. This is we don't call object-oriented programming in Python. We simply call it as classes. And today, I would like to talk about some important concepts like classes, and then subsection. Here in classes, I will talk how to create a class and use those classes to inquire the methods and as well as and after the class I just methods. This is I'm going to talk about methods, and after methods I think I have methods, and before methods I should be having variables. Don't know where I have the classes, methods, and then I think methods and variables. Now to take care of variables and methods, and then after that The subheading is going to be subclasses, and then this after subclasses we are going to have class inheritance. I mean, subclass is none than class inheritance is class inheritance. So these are the three important concepts which I'm going to share with you. First, I will be talking with this concept class. What do you mean a class? So that's the first question. And we need to. A class is actually the combination of the data and functions. Every function will have kind of arguments. You are in third year. By now, all of you must be knowing about functions. A function is a logic which process arguments, also known as inputs. Like we write in Python def, and then every def is a function in which we have some requirements. Just like this, a function goes def, then you write my func, and then here arg1, arg2, and something, so on and on. And then we start, this is logic. So here we write all the logic, pass, I just write pass. So this is how the functions, a function, it is actually a method. Every function will be having a method. Method is known as logic, and this logic is meant for these inputs. And these inputs most of the time refer to as data. We simply call them as data. So whenever we refer class in Python, it is just a combination of the data and functions. A function together with data. And these functions will have attributes and methods. So that is kind of jargon that we use in Python. So in today's today's class, what we do, we'll try to develop an object-oriented program, or we'll be writing the programs using objects for a particular use case called employees. Okay, so here the use case is going to be like that. We first define a class, a parent class called employee. All right, okay, and then here there will be two children. I mean, we don't call them as children. We call them subclasses. Okay, this is a parent class or master class. Okay, and then you have subclasses. I am just going to assume two classes within this master class. They are going to be developer and manager. So imagine that we are just developing a package for a software company. So where all of them are employees, and in those employees there are two subclasses. We call them as a small SME, kind of startup. So in your language, present generation language, we used to call it MSME, SME kind of. But today, startup is a very crazy word. So in your language, it is a startup. Imagine that we are writing a program for a startup where there is a class. We are developing some certain software application to take care of adding, deleting employees. And we are going to use a master class called employee because everybody is an employee. Even an employer in some sense is also an employee because he is also a firm is a liability to an employer. I think you must have studied this in accounts. A firm is a separate entity from the employer. Employer cannot treat a firm as his own image, on his own image. A firm is a liability to an employer. So every employer is an employee, and then in that there may be many types of employees. But for time being, we are going to imagine two types of employees, developer and manager. A manager is a person who has the authority to decide the attributes. Here I have, I think, attributes and methods. Yeah, here variables, also called as attributes. Attributes. So this manager has the authority to decide the attributes and also implement the methods on each of his subordinates. And every manager will be having a developer as a subordinate, maybe a developer or anything, whatever. So in this use case, we are going to imagine three entities. The first entity is a master class in which we have the employee, and second entity we have the developer, and third entity is the manager. So this is, in a nutshell, this is what is the idea of the this package. I mean, and we are trying to write this package using object-oriented programming concepts. Now, whenever you, I mean, there is another definition for class. We call class as a blueprint. In other words, a class is a blueprint for each of the instance, a blueprint for an instance. That is also one of the ways to define a class. A blueprint for an instance. An employee is another instance. It is actually the master class. We have two subclasses, one parent and two children. Now the instance is, whenever we use this class for any entity, it turns into an instance. Suppose I can, after I define an employee, okay, I can come somewhere, I can define an employee using this, the class. Now this emp is an instance, okay. So this employee, okay, this employee, it is just a blueprint for this instance. So in that way, a class can also have an extra property called an instance. So we instantiate, whenever we use this class employee, we usually will see that in action. Okay, let me define a class. You see, when I put the word class and Python editor, script turns, start formatting the words. Now when I press enter, the Python is going to start. I just simply pass and then come here. I write as an employee, and then I instantiate this class. Okay, employee. It is better to say employee one and then employee. I just leave it. Okay, because we don't have any properties. We are ready to define the properties. So I'll just leave it as it is. And then let's see what's going to happen. Now let me go to run and execute this. Now you see it just becomes silent, which means it had executed the file. There is no error. So whenever there is no error, now let's go and write the employee. It's not the MP. Think employee one.
Sir, your voice is breaking.
Whenever we write the employee one, let me here at my side it is okay. Do you all experience the same thing? You're not able to listen to me?
It is clear only, sir.
Yeah, I think you have to check. I don't know whoever raised this complaint. You have to check your laptop. In my machine, everything is okay. I checked audio as well as. Only thing is I switched off video.
It is clear.
Okay. Now I think I'm not able to do this. We instantiate the employee one, employee, print employee one. Now let me see if I suppose I did this here, and now I run this. Okay, control. Yeah, please move the window away from the shared application. Employee is equal to employee is a, no, it's not. Import is OS list layout. OS current working directory. Sys, I guess. Import sys current. Get current working directory. Do you anybody know how to? Yeah, current working. Get current working directory. Program files. No. I think why it is not going on. I'm not able to run this script file. Python run module. Yeah. Actually, I'm not running it. And employee is equal to employee. Now I think I can see the sys OS get current working directory. Um, yeah, now I think we are in the project directory. Now we can go for employee. I left CLS. Okay, now I think we have employee is equal to employee. Is it? Yeah, employee. Now you see. So I didn't write anything. Still, we are to go for. I think you should be able to see my ideally editor, right? Are you able to see the editor?
No, sir.
No,
No.
sir, we are not able to see.
Okay, it's all right, but don't talk to me. Okay, you just write in the if you when you're talking, the voice is reverberating in my ears. I have earphones. Please. That is why I said, please write to me. Okay. You say I'm going to open the Python shell. Now you should be able to see here, right? You are able to just write yes. No, when you say no, yes, my the voice reverberates in my brain. Yes, are you able to see the shell?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, madam, please don't say yes, Sandy. Remove del, I guess, right? Del employee. So this is how you employee is equal to whenever you come. So we defined a class with class statement. Now when you press employee, you see this is an object. The main module employee object. Employee is an object. Now let's go back to the Python file. Yes, yes. Okay. Now what we do, we try to define some properties to this class. I just instead of just I'm just going to add some logic to this object, and the logic is going to be like this. We'll just take first name, last name, and pay for this employee, and then we try to define a method called full name. Okay, we'll be having, so imagine that we are in a certain situation where some input data is arriving, and that data has first name and last name of the employee, and based on that input data we should be able to create a full name as well as email. Okay, how are we going to do? So that is all about the exercise for this class employee. Okay, now employee, every class, whenever you define a class, you need to instantiate. It is not actually instantiation, it is called initialization. You need to initialize that class with the help of a definition. So how do we do that? We have to start a definition, then the initialization of the class happens with this function underscore underscore init underscore underscore, then start a bracket, then you have to write self. The self is actually the self of the instance. See, this is initialization and this is instantiation. The self is going to, this self is will be the instance of this class. So that is why, like a minute before I created an object called emp. Emp is actually an instance of employee. So that emp is none other than self. So whenever we call self, that is nothing but employee main class, and this class, all the properties, attributes, methods of this class will be transferred to an instance with any of the username. So you can call employee, employee one, employee two, whatever it is. That is what is this self. Okay, now this is called initialization. So we are going to initialize this class with the help of a method, and this is called a special method, magic method, dunder method. There are many. It is better to call special method, but community has different types of names. Now whenever you, not only for this initialization, whenever you define a method, you need to use this keyword called self. Okay, for static methods. Now self, I'm just going to imagine this is the first name and then last name. I mean, these are the input, incoming data. We are not going to actually imagine that we have a database. whenever some customer goes to a shop, I mean shop in the sense a retail showroom, whenever he or she involves in some buying activity, now while checking out, their details or credentials, at least a phone number. Today, if you hand over the phone number, all your details will be there with them. Yeah, they will tell you what is your name. So your name, first name, last name, your email. That happens during the time of registration. Like suppose if you go to Apollo and you ask for a membership card, then while issuing the membership card, the people will take all your credentials, your first name, last name, email, and all everything, phone number. If you at least give some phone number, then they have some kind of they can design the method. I mean their systems such a way that they can retrieve the information related to a particular individual, because today our information is available from so many social media platforms. Now imagine that we are getting this data from a database or maybe from a user form, like customer HTML user forms. When you go to the website, you hand over some data to a HTML template. Now, even through that, suppose if you register, like you need to register for a Gmail, you need to register for a Yahoo Mail, you need to register for some, suppose you want to go for an online training on Coursera or maybe Udemy, then you have to register. Without registering, you cannot do anything. So either through some input data will be there for every system. So now imagine that we have some input data, and that data is first name, last name, and then pay. Actually, the pay is not an input data, but it comes in other database, salaries kind of. We have a database. Imagine that this data is coming from some certain databases. First name and last name are coming from a personal database. I mean personal details of employees, and the pay is coming from financial department. And there is a imagine that there is a database or a data table with finance department, and these details are coming from. Now, how are you going to define the methods? Full name and email. So the system, we are writing the software program so that the Python will create an email automatically based on these input details, namely first name and last. Now, how are you going to do that? So immediately after this, we are going to initialize these variables, self first, which means the first property of this is going to be first. The first is going to be the property or parameter or argument, and that property is going to be the property of the self. What is the self here? This employee, and whomever we initialize this, instantiate this employee, and their property is going to be the first. So that is what is indirectly. Now first, this is last. If you understand this, the entire OOP will be with you. This is the only the crux of the logic. Self last is going to be last, sorry, and then self pay is going to be pay. Now you don't need to put a double. We are not comparing here. We are just assigning. So this first, that incoming matter is going to be assigned for this as a property for this particular class. The first is the property for this class first, last is the property last for this class, and pay. We're just going to assign. Now here you can do so many things. There are methods like def, repr. There are kind of methods, but we are not going to do all those things. If I start talking them, you will be nowhere. So straight away, I'm just going to define a method now. I'm going to call this as email. So this is not coming from the database. We are just using that incoming information and trying to manufacture the email for this employee. And now this is going to, what is that information? First, I'm just going to use first plus, and then I use a dot. So this is how most of the time, in TCS, Wipro, employees will be having dot method. I mean dotted emails, their first name, last name. Even until now, we used to, even in Geetham, my email used to be kamakshaya.musnuru@geetham.edu. Now they changed everything. That is a different. So how does that happen? So they take my details, my first name and last name, and they manufacture the email ID kamakshaya.musunuru. Kamakshaya is my first name in the database, and Musunuru is the last name in the database. And last plus now at email.com. No, that's some dummy email. Don't worry about it. Now, what I said, we are going to define two methods. The first method is over, and this is actually not a method. This method is implemented as a variable. Please be cautious. It's not this is not totally a method. It's a method in itself, but by through a variable. So we are going to execute this method through a variable. Now we are going. I'm going to show you how to define a full-fledged method. Def method is obviously a function. Now def, this time I call full name, and here again self. So wherever you have a method, a variable, or any property of the class, there you have to enclose this statement self. Otherwise, that will not be recognized as uh, a valid ingredient within the class. Excuse me. Okay, now what are we are just going to return. I'm just going to use a particular method. That's a format method. In it is a very useful method available in Python. Now whenever you write like this, two curly braces, when the pace of curly braces dot format, then we are just going to put I'm just going to write first here, and then last, and then self. Oh, sorry, I cannot write like this. So it is actually now self first, self last. That's all. So we don't need anything. The first name and last name is the full name of the individual. Now I can just save this. Now go to run. You see here we defined a class employee, and we initialized this class with a default statement called self, and we would like to accept three incoming arguments. They are first name, last name, and payment. So this is initialization. Based on that incoming information, we defined a variable. Here it is actually a property. It's not simply, this is a variable. First is a variable. This is not a variable actually, this is a property. We used a method for that. Now there is a function. We also defined a function. So you can process the information by creating a variable. You can also, that is what is the intention of explaining this form. You can process the information by creating a variable. You can also process the information by defining a method. So that is ultimately what I would like to talk to you. Now straight away go to the Python run module. Now I think you will not be able to see I'm going to share the Python shell. You see here I executed successfully. Now I call CLS. Yeah, CLS is not there. Okay, it has gone. Okay, fine. Now employee, I have only 10 minutes of time left. So at any time the session will pop off, and if the session closes, it simply means that I'm not going to close. It closes automatically. Employee, then employee. Now we have, earlier we never had any arguments, so we just did like this, right? You can also do like this. There is nothing wrong, but anyway we define. We are just going to write names. I call no, I just simply make some dummy data here, m comma k, something like this, and my payment is something I write 1 lakh kind of thing. So dummy information, don't worry. This is employee. Now employee, let me call for a method first, that is m, and now anyway these are all there, we defined. There is nothing so magic about, I mean, it is k. Now employee, these are all now converted as attributes. Earlier they were arguments. Now these arguments were converted as attributes of this class employee. Now this employee is an instance, and this employee is an object. What is this object? Is a class object in Python. This employee is a class object, and this is an instance. And now this instance has got all these properties of this employee through polymorphism. Now all the attributes of this employee were transferred to employee. Now whenever we put some arguments inside this function, these arguments will be converted as properties of this employee, then pay. Now we got. Now you see the magic is the processed information. This is all just we input information. We just supplied this information to this class. That is not so great. The great is employee full name. Now you see, I think we don't have this is. Oh, name is not coming. Return. Only M is coming, full name. Employee full name. Okay, let's go for the other one, email. Yeah, email is coming. And there also, I think M is there. Some M kind of, oh, I gave wrong information here. Here, I only did this mistake. Now, employee email. Okay, employee full name. Now, why it is not coming? Full name is not coming. So let me go back to the script and see. Format, self first, self last. So that is okay. Why it is not working here? Return full name, self. Am I doing any mistake here? Def full name, self. This is everything is there. I think, shall we go for this? Shall we go for a string? I don't know how to make the string. Yeah. We go for self. First, I think it is going to be closed. It's giving me some message, self dot last. Shall we use this or run module? Now let me go for employee is equal to employee. I think I already have that in history, right? Let me go for, yeah. MK employee email. Now it is working. Employee full name. Okay, now I think we are doing some mistake at formatting. See here, this format statement is not working. We have to figure it out. In both cases, in both cases, it is not working. Even if I write like this, I think as far as my knowledge is concerned, I am okay. And this is okay. Format. Do I need to put bracket? I don't think it is necessary. Self. I think I did a mistake. First, self, last. I think I had the self there, I guess, earlier. Extra argument. Now,